Welcome to Mesozoic's video on creating his hybrid, Samson. Now, Mesozoic does theoretical and what-if scenarios, like a certain mythical creature or dinosaur at a certain era or different timeline or a different universe, and create out with what-if evolution. Let's start off with the dinosaur that could and have the highest potential beating Indom 2.0. Well, let's watch. YouTube Country Dinosaur community patron. Alright. Guilty guy dangerous. Shut the fuck up!
I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse.
Ladies and gentle soars, today we will be interrupting our regularly scheduled SpecEvo programming to bring you something special. For those of you who watch Goji Center, one of my favorite channels and a big inspiration for my own, you've probably seen this video of theirs where they redesigned the Indominus Rex from Jurassic World. And you may have also seen Goji Guy's video about creating his own hybrid dinosaur to take on the Indominus 2.0, which Goji Center promptly eviscerated without even changing theirs. And it was just moments after finishing this video when I realized Goji Guy went about it the wrong way. The perfect counter to a super carnivore isn't another super carnivore, it's a super herbivore. When we think about conflicts between animals, more often than not, we're thinking predator versus prey, not so much predator versus predator. For what is T-Rex without Triceratops? The cheetah without the gazelle? Or the lion without the buffalo? Not only am I going to create this hybrid with fewer species than Goji Center used to create theirs, just 7, I'm not going to use any dinosaurs or predators at all. In fact, I am going to double down on my channel's well-established mammal bias and prove mammalian supremacy by using only mammalian prey items, or at least mammals that aren't really meat eaters, with one exception. And by now, you've probably also noticed some biblical themes in this video. And this is because Goji Center quoted the Bible in their video, specifically some bits of Mark 5:9, "My name is Legion, for we are many." This suggests that the Indominus 2.0 and its offspring are demons. And to take on demons, we must levy righteousness. Also because I've been itching to make a video with some biblical themes, and this was the perfect excuse to do so.
Whom shall I send?
The genome.
And who will go for us?
Goji Center, in their latest community post as of me making this video, have told us that the purpose of the Indominus 2.0 was to be a primarily terrestrial animal with the capability to bring down all life forms, big and small, reproduce quickly, and cause a localized extinction event. And we see in their initial video that the Indominus 2.0 is a vector for many diseases. And one of these diseases has the potential to rapidly evolve to transmit to humans and presumably wipe out millions of people. In our scenario, all mammals, birds, and reptiles carry the Indominus plague. And it has mutated so much that every breath any one of these animals takes spreads the disease into the air and onto surfaces. And human civilization is rapidly nosediving towards extinction. The creation of our hybrid starts with a team of top geneticists working under a coalition of world governments who've so far survived the Indominus plague by hiding in an underground compound located on a remote tropical island in Malaysia. Our geneticists were tasked with creating an animal that could challenge the Indominus 2.0 without human intervention. Unlike InGen, they had no access to dinosaur DNA. They could only work with living tissue samples and some Pleistocene mammal DNA seized from Masrani Global not long after the bankruptcy of the company following the events of 2015. Their goal was to maximize strength, power, and efficiency while using as few different animals as possible in order to maintain congruence. The Paleoloxodon was the clear choice for the base. Simulations run by Goji Center themselves have already confirmed that the animal was capable of taking on theropod dinosaurs. Their tusks will be our hybrid's primary means of puncturing through the dinosaur's armor, while also serving as blunt force weapons, able to be swung back and forth like giant clubs, ensuring the Indominus can't rush our hybrid head-on without risk of serious injury or death. Elephants, especially bull males, are some of the most defensive and territorial creatures in the animal kingdom, and this alone will give our behemoth the confidence it needs to stand up to our enemy. They sport the largest brain of any land mammal that we know of. Their intelligence would have already been on par, if not higher than that of the Indominus 2.0, at least with what we know given its genome. This brain supports some very powerful senses. In ideal conditions, they can pick up on scents from as far as 12 miles away, making use of over 2,500 olfactory receptor genes. This is 5 times more than humans, and more than 3 times as many as T-Rex, the animal with the strongest sense of smell in the Indominus's genome. If for whatever reason it doesn't smell the hybrid carnivore, they will certainly be able to hear or even feel her coming before she even has a chance to strike. Elephants can detect infrasonic sounds from anywhere between 2 and 6 miles away, depending on surrounding conditions. Their highly sensitive feet pads allow them to communicate via sending and receiving low-frequency rumbles through the ground, with some studies suggesting they can do this over several kilometers. Needless to say, our hybrid will know where several Indominus are before any of them know where they are. Their trunks can lift up to 500 kilograms or 1,100 pounds, around 6 to 10% of their body weight. Even stronger are their necks, being able to lift at least their own body weight in tandem with their tusks. Using a 2024 estimate for the largest Paleoloxodon, the ancient elephant was about 4.5 meters tall, 6 to 7 meters long excluding their tusks, and weighed no more than 18 tons or 16,000 kilograms. The skull of Paleoloxodon nemidicus comes equipped with a large bony boss structure on the top of their head that serves as an attachment for neck muscles, making it likely even stronger by proportion. Given that the scaling of size and strength is not a direct one-to-one correlation, we'll say that the elephant at minimum can lift 9 tons or half its body weight, which means Paleoloxodon can already lift more than half the weight of its adversary. While this is impressive, the ancient elephant can't stand up to the hybrid demon without upgrades. It needs to be bigger, and what better choice for increasing size than the largest animal of all time, the blue whale. Now, we're not going to just straight up make it the same size of the blue whale, but if the blue whale genome we add increases the size of our hybrid and is carefully selected for efficacy, our elephant is now 8.2 meters tall and 11 meters long. This immense weight combined with the sturdy and high center gravity of the Paleoloxodon would make any attempts to push this animal over by the Indominus downright impossible. However, this size comes with some complications. We need the cardiovascular system to support this massive upscaling. A blue whale's lungs and heart are twice the size of the elephant's in proportion to their body. We will be taking the whale's robust heart and lungs, as well as their flexible rib cage and pleural cavity to make room for their action. We will also be using their large and robust liver, which won't make sense now, but it'll come up later. Secondly, this is far too much weight for a mammal this size, mostly because of the skeletal structure of the Pleistocene elephant. But we don't actually need anything from the whale to fix this. There's another animal later down the line that'll help us, but for now, we can use the same gene editing technology to simply increase the thickness of our hybrid's bones by 1.5 to 2 times to compensate. Even with a doubling in mass, their skin is just not going to be thick enough to hold up to the claws of the Indominus. A cornerstone for many of the animals that large theropods hunted in the Mesozoic is armor. And among mammals, there's really only one clear choice for this: the Glyptodon. Their armor was the thickest of any known mammal. Armadillos, a modern relative of theirs with similar, albeit much smaller bony shells, have sometimes deflected or slowed down small caliber bullets like .22 long rifle or even 9mm from a distance. However, if we simply throw a behemoth-sized Glyptodon shell over our hybrid, it's not going to be able to move very well. And a big part of the Paleoloxodon being able to defeat the T-Rex in Goji Center's video was its mobility. And we can't afford to sacrifice too much of that here. We'll have to selectively apply this armor in segments, preferably on the back, top of the neck, shoulders, sides, and flanks. We'll be leaving the underside without armor, not only because the Glyptodons didn't have any there, but also because if the Indominus 2.0 tries to go for this underside, they would put themselves in danger of being trampled or crushed. Now, in terms of thickness, we'll cover critical areas like the neck, flanks, and sides with the thickest of armor, which, if reasonably scaled up with our hybrid, shouldn't exceed more than 8 centimeters. Less critical areas like the shoulders, thighs, and back will be no thicker than 5 to 6 centimeters. We will also be incorporating the Glyptodon's armored club tail, combining this with some of the DNA of the whale to give us a long, rigid armored tail that can be swung with some respectable force. So, this suit of armor should serve sufficient for deflecting our enemy's attacks. The Indominus won't be able to properly mount the animal like it can with sauropods due to the dense and round surface of their armor, and the same goes for their bone-crushing bites. Even with the wide gaping maw of the hybrid carnivore, the broad surface of the armor would make it difficult for it to apply its bone-crushing bite, not to mention that the highest forces their bite can produce can only be applied by the back teeth, not by the front. The fourth species we'll be taking DNA from is the Megatherium, or the giant ground sloth, and not for the reasons you may think. Megatherium had incredibly powerful limbs, front and back. While they used their forelimbs to grab onto the trunks and branches of the trees they fed on, massive hind limbs worked in tandem with an extended, sturdy calcaneus bone to hold up their hulking bodies. I want these powerful limbs, and more importantly,
I want the limbs.
I want this heel bone.
I want the
In Goji
heel
Center's
bone.
T-Rex
Give it
vs.
to me now.
Paleoloxodon video, the large elephant finishes the theropod off by rearing up its hind legs and bringing all of its weight down onto its ribs. At our current size and weight, that would be almost impossible. But if we give our hybrid the limb strength to push all of its body weight off the ground, as well as the balance of the heel bone, it can come right back down and crush the dinosaur like an anvil on a pumpkin. And just to add insult to injury, while I can't give our massive proboscidean the ability to knuckle walk, I can enhance the little nubby toes on the front to be more formidable claws that will leave the hybrid demon with no chance at an open casket. Tusks are a great weapon, but with all that size, I'd be foolish not to enhance their ability to deliver pure blunt force trauma. For this, I have decided on the bighorn sheep as our 5th species. Now, I know. Why this instead of something with more forward-facing horns like a buffalo? Well, because this lamb has more to offer than just horns. When placed on the hybrid, the ram horns will actually serve as protection for our elephant's ears. This will make it harder for the Indominus to get a hold of the elephant's big vulnerable ears, as well as narrow the path to access their throat. Secondly, the thick, layered, shock-absorbing cranium of the sheep will increase the amount of force this animal can take to the skull tenfold. And lastly, the powerful rear legs of the bighorn sheep are designed to provide quick bursts of power, as well as redirect force from headbutts into the ground, further augmenting the shock absorption and the limb strength of our hybrid, and ideally also giving us a slight boost in speed. For our 6th creature, we have the solution to our disease problem: fruit bats. It's commonly known that bats are the carriers of untold numbers of diseases, including some of the deadliest viruses, rabies, Ebola, SARS, and many more. Bats very rarely show symptoms of these diseases that they carry, which is actually still a mystery to scientists today, but is presumed to be because of its ability to limit inflammation. This trait from the bat and our size-induced high body temperature will make it very hard for the Indominus plague to affect our hybrid, even though they will certainly be carriers of it. I had thought about using domestic pigs instead of bats because they're pretty resistant to diseases, but even more so resistant to venom. But after running some math, true venom, even in massive doses which the Indominus might deliver, would probably have no effect on a creature our size, but if a theoretical lethal dose was achieved by the Indominus, our hybrid's sheer size and elevated body temperature would rapidly break down the shrew venom's enzymes before they could achieve their full effect. Which brings us to our 7th animal, and the one species where the geneticists abstained from using only mammals: the scaly-footed gastropod. This deep-sea snail has a few aces up its shell that will bring the rest of the hybrid's genome and traits into harmony. First, these gastropods don't eat anything. Instead, they intake hydrogen sulfides from the deep-sea volcanic vents that they live around. This is because they have a symbiotic relationship with gamma proteobacteria that will process and break down these chemicals in order to feed the gastropod internally, while a portion of it is processed into iron sulfides like pyrite and greigite. These materials move through the bloodstream of the deep-sea snail to their shell, which vastly enhances its strength, giving them some of, if not the strongest armor of any living creature in the animal kingdom. We will be taking this bacteria and placing it within the stomach and esophageal glands of our hybrid, as well as traits from the gastropod to make our animal able to process the waste in order to receive energy from it. But how will our hybrid get a hold of enough hydrogen sulfides to feed these bacteria, since they won't be near any deep-sea volcanic vents? Waterlogged sediments are very high in iron and hydrogen sulfides. Our hybrid will be eating a lot of this muck in order to feed the bacteria in their stomachs. The hybrid circulatory system will distribute these iron sulfides to various parts of the body by means of specialized macrophages synthesized in the bone marrow, which will transport and bind them to the cells of their bones, dentin, and keratin, and yes, that includes the keratin in their skin. These carefully placed microscopic bonds will reinforce all these tissues, increasing their fracture resistance, tensile, and compressive strength by anywhere between 30 and 50%. This is why I mentioned the whale liver earlier on, as it's gonna need some serious waste filtering power. If we mix our hybrid mammalian liver with the properties of the gastropod's hepatopancreas, it should be able to handle it. Though iron sulfides are brittle on their own, when combined with these structural tissues, it would be even stronger than the iron bone composite seen in the teeth and claws of the Indominus 2.0. On the Mohs scale, iron has a hardness of about 5, while pyrite has a hardness of around 6.5, rendering our adversary's ironclad weapons drastically less effective. A huge problem our hybrid is going to have with all of its biological processes and its size is body heat. The more we scale up our elephant, the less surface area he has to dissipate his heat. Given that it's an endothermic animal, this is going to be a serious problem. Unless we give it traits from the snail that will allow it to better tolerate this internal heat. The scaly-footed gastropod is an extremophile, living around deep-sea volcanic vents where they can tolerate a maximum temperature of 120 degrees Celsius or 248 degrees Fahrenheit. This is thanks to specialized heat shock proteins and enzymes adapted to maintain cellular function at high temperatures. Including these proteins and enzymes in their body should squash any concerns about body heat. Modern elephant calves take anywhere between 18 to 22 months to gestate in their mother's wombs. And if we want our hybrid to have any chance of reproducing in the presence of a population of Indominus 2.0, this will just simply not do. The scaly-footed gastropod, of course, does not give birth to live young like most mammals do. They instead will lay hundreds of eggs at a time. So, instead of gestating, our hybrid will lay large amounts of eggs like the snail, prioritizing the quantity of offspring, being probably no larger than a rabbit upon hatching. Now, hatching that small, it would take well over 50 years to reach full size. However, within the Jurassic Cinematic Universe, even non-hybrid dinosaurs are modified to reach maturity rapidly. According to the Masrani global marketing website from back in 2015, the first InGen animals were cloned in 1986, and the first mature dinosaurs were moved from Sorna to Nublar in 1988. So the technology to rapidly accelerate the growth of animals without hybridizing has already been established. So I see no problem in applying this to our mammalian behemoth to achieve similar numbers. Sea snails are capable of mating with each other or self-fertilizing at the expense of genetic diversity, very similar to the parthenogenesis of their demonic adversary. With the genome for humanity's last chance against the Indominus 2.0 sequenced, the geneticists of the coalition raise a herd of these animals and prepare them to exorcise these demons from Isla Nublar.
Oh shit, here we go.
Look now at the
Like this
behemoth. His bones are like beams of bronze, his ribs like bars of iron.
Introducing the Diciotherium deus, a perfect
Like this
hybrid
beast of
behemoth to
God.
vanquish this demon that possesses the ruins of Isla Nublar. And just as Goji Guy gave his creation a name, I will also give mine a name. The savior of human civilization and of Isla Nublar, Samson.
Samson.
At full
The big
size, not
difficult.
including his tusks, Samson is 10 meters or 32.8 feet long. He is 8.2 meters or 27 feet tall, almost 6 meters wide, and weighs 83 US tons, or over 75,000 kilograms. Samson and just one other Diciotherium named Delilah were produced in the lab via artificial wombs and raised in the underground facility. They were fed an extremely high-calorie, viscous, and frozen blend of foods called manna, enriched with crystallized hydrogen sulfide to strengthen their bones and armor. While growing up, they were subject to many tests, including durability and combat tests. He was fired upon with bullets of increasing caliber, starting with .22 long rifle all the way up to .308 Winchester, and all rounds failed to penetrate his armor.
Damn.
When Samson was about the size of a pickup truck, he was put into a shoving match with an armored M1114 Humvee, not only matching the vehicle's power output, but also aggressively goring the vehicle and piercing its steel armor plates in various spots well after the experiment had concluded. The Diciotherium's capacity for herding behavior was proven early on when Samson and Delilah could not go long without being near each other, and when they were moved from their paddock to other parts of the facility, one would hold the other by the tail, much like modern Indian elephants do. The two hybrids
Aw.
stayed in this facility until they exceeded the size of an adult African elephant. They were supposed to stay for longer, but by the time they had reached this size, the facility could no longer make enough manna for the elephants to continue growing. They were sent to the surface of the island and observed using drones and trail cams while efforts to find a cure for the Indominus plague fruitlessly continued. The size and many complex biological processes of these animals made their hunger insatiable, and they began to devour any and all plants in sight, eating trees whole, and even digging their roots out from the ground with their massive toe claws. The Diciotherium had consumed nearly the entire island, leaving behind a barren wasteland of rock and dirt. In this time frame, the first two elephants had reached what was assumed to be their full size, and produced over 147 offspring, which were the only hatchlings that grew past 3.5 months of over 12,600 eggs laid by their parents. 80 of these offspring were between the ages of 4 and 5, and were already as large or exceeded the size estimates for Paleoloxodon. Trail cams show that once the first of their offspring reached around 2 years old, Samson and Delilah allowed them to join their herd, and became very protective of them when trail cams emitted recordings of Tyrannosaurus vocalizations. This was enough for the generals of the coalition to be satisfied. The military
Genesis
personnel
6.
corralled only 23 of the largest Diciotherium, including the original two, onto a large autopiloted vessel modified to hold them as well as massive stores of manna while they made their 7-week journey to Isla Nublar.
Let's go to guy. Samson versus
Do we have
Indominus.
talent? We have talents.
Then the unclean spirits
The
went out and
exorcism.
entered the swine, and the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea, and drowned in the sea.
Upon reaching the shores of Isla Nublar, the landing craft beached itself and automatically opened its massive front door. Samson was the first to come running out, immediately tossing up sand and trumpeting with excitement, followed by Delilah and their offspring. Though he didn't know any better, Samson's excitement attracted unwanted attention. The Indominus comes rushing out from the tree line and stops for a moment to observe this strange creature. She's never seen anything like Samson, but she's also hungry, and food is scarce. This strange, large, glistening animal looks like a tough nut to crack, but if she can manage to kill it, it'll be enough to feed her and her young for days. So how would a one-on-one between these two go? Well, not that I'm biased or anything, I'm pretty sure Samson wins about 8 times out of 10. He can lift almost her body weight with his trunk alone, and 3 times her body weight with his neck and tusks. If the Indominus managed to somehow get on top of Samson, it would be extremely difficult for her to be up there for very long without slipping off, since even her iron claws wouldn't give her traction on his composite armor. She wouldn't be able to scratch at his neck and back like she does with sauropods for the same reason. Trying to exploit what weak spots Samson does have, like his limbs, underside, and trunk, effectively puts her in a kill zone. Going for his trunk, she either gets gored, bludgeoned, or tossed by 83 tons of mammal. Going for his limbs or underside, she's 1 step away from all that weight being brought down on her, disabling if not killing her instantly. I say 8 times out of 10 because there are 2 scenarios where I see a lone Indominus killing Samson. The first is using her speed and intelligence to wear him down, baiting him to attack and burn energy while striking wherever she can. But this would probably take hours and wear her out as well. The second is if the Indominus has one of these convenient,
A sharpened metal pole.
a well-placed thrust to the chest or eye socket would kill Samson. Now, of course, 2 or 3 Indominus 2.0 could certainly take down 1 Diciotherium, but even then the Diciotherium would very rarely be alone. It's a herd animal, and each member of said herd is a walking arsenal. Even if Samson can take on Goji Center's Indominus 2.0 in a one-on-one fight, what are the long-term effects of Diciotherium being introduced to Isla Nublar? What was the Coalition's goal? The larger goal wasn't to win the 1v1, though we certainly could. The creation of Samson was a race against time to support the Indominus 2.0's population before they died off. You see, the Indominus 2.0 is the only species on the planet that has natural immunity to the Indominus plague, and given that they multiply so quickly, it was only a matter of time before Isla Nublar was devoid of any life, the hybrids resorting to eating each other and eventually going extinct. And with them, humanity's only hope for a cure. Attempts to create a vaccine from tissue samples of these dinosaurs were largely unsuccessful, mostly because acquiring said samples was so dangerous, but also because the DNA of the Indominus 2.0 was too mixed-matched and not congruent enough to make a vaccine for humans from. This is why using mostly mammals for our hybrid was so important. The Diciotherium had 2 different goals while on Isla Nublar, the first of which was to eat any and all plant life to support their incredibly demanding metabolisms, destroying the ecosystem from top to bottom, and by proxy killing off any other animals that could potentially be a vector for the Indominus plague. The second goal is to provide a food source for the Indominus 2.0 for just long enough to build up an immunity to the Indominus plague. As a result of the Diciotherium eating their way through the island, the resident hybrid carnivores won't have any choice but to hunt the Diciotherium. We're designed to be just durable and challenging enough of a prey item, but not so impossible to kill that they won't try to hunt them. They can hear and smell them coming and relocate before the carnivores even know they're there, and if they do manage to face a Diciotherium, the herd has strength in numbers, and physically are very difficult to take down. They won't fail to kill a Diciotherium every time, but they will fail enough times to slowly start dwindling in population as the hybrid elephants continue to grow in population. As the herds get larger and more common, it will become increasingly difficult for them to get a meal, and they may even resort to eating their own young, as well as each other to stay alive. But their end is already written. Samson has already won, and humanity by proxy.
So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. But there was no sword in the hand of David.
When most life on the island was gone, save for some Diciotherium, humanity took what was left of themselves, as well as some materials to terraform it, back to Isla Nublar, and synthesized a vaccine from the Diciotherium that prevented both newborn humans and sheep from contracting or
Livestock.
experiencing symptoms of the Indominus plague. They will continue to work towards bringing this nasty plague to a heel for all animals, perhaps finding a way to aerosolize it and spread it across the earth. Samson himself was nowhere to be found upon arrival, until one day, when surveying the island for places to build housing for the increasing population, Samson's skeleton, which was identifiable by the numbers on his horns, was found under the rubble of Jurassic World's Innovation Center, with a long piece of broken paddock fencing between his ribs. Alongside him were the skeletons of 3 large Indominus Rex, with broken bones in various places. It was presumed that when Samson reared up to stomp on one of these predators, the Indominus pierced him with a large metal pole, and he fell on his back, bringing the old building down with him and killing them all.
At least he went out with a bang.
So, I started working on this video pretty much like an hour after Goji Center's video came out, and since then I've seen plenty of people coming up with their own hybrids to take on the Indominus 2.0. So realistically, I don't expect any sort of response from them. I've also kind of created my own scenario from what little they shared about theirs. If Goji Center does have their own scenario drafted up, it's probably not anything like what played out here, which also kind of falls apart if we don't retcon the eruption of Mount Sibo and Fallen Kingdom, so there's also that. Now, I know this is way different from what I usually upload, but don't worry, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled Assessing Survival episodes, unless you guys like this hybrid stuff, which let me know if you do. As always, a big shout out to our patrons: Fluffy Dino, Lex Gun, Galactic Narwhal, Mr. Matt, The Juan Kaiser, Scadu Master, Nachteinbruch, Alec Foisey, MTL, Milkman, and Milady Y. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Dorks.
That was Samson. And it was a good analysis how they could combat with herbivores rather than using any sorts of carnivore and dinosaurs against the Indom 2.0. Even the scenario was intense. Samson and Dwyer were bred by artificial room and fed a new material called mana to keep them fed and well-being, while also have them ready to face against the demons themselves. That was Mesozoic analysis and design on Samson. Next time, we'll be going for the Hall of Shame and Honorable Mention. Hoping by then, we reveal the top 16 hybrids that could beat Indom 2.0. Bye-bye!